Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I want to talk about skirmish war games versus role-playing games and where do they overlap. So this week I'm addressing a question I was asked some time ago by David Benton in the comments. He asked, does skirmish war games that only use a handful of figures and role-playing games with a significant martial component, are they the exact same thing, just approached from different directions? So as an active role player for over 40 years and a wargamer for almost as long, I think it's fair to say I have some experience of both types of game. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to tackle this subject in particular was that yesterday I went to one of the best role-playing conventions in the UK, Dragon Meet at Hammersmith. Now, I've been going to this show now for probably over 20 years and it remains an eclectic and vibrant showcase of role-playing games. Now, I'm planning on reporting back on this event later in the week, but in the meantime I thought I'd like to consider David's question about the potential overlap between role-playing games and skirmish war games. So tabletop gaming encompasses a vast range of formats from sprawling war games with hundreds of miniatures to intimate role-playing games focused on a single character's journey. And between these extremes lies an intriguing grey area: skirmish war games and role-playing games with a significant martial component. Both formats share notable similarities, small-scale engagements, tactical depth, immersive storytelling. However, they also differ in key ways. So today I wanted to explore whether these two formats are fundamentally the same, where their boundaries lie, and what implications can be drawn for designers and players alike. The skirmish war games focus on small-scale battles where players control a handful of figures, each with unique abilities or stats. And the gameplay is, by nature, tactical, often revolving around carefully positioning, resource management and achieving specific objectives. And narrative elements often exist in these games, but they're usually there to serve as a backdrop, with the emphasis remaining on the game as a structured, rules-driven challenge. Good examples of this would include games like Frostgrave, Necromunda, Blood and Valour, Lion Rampant, to name just a handful of the hundreds that are available. Whereas in contrast, role-playing games may include a significant element of tactical combat, but this is always part of a broader narrative. Players control individual characters, each with a backstory, personality and goals that influence not only how they approach that combat, but also non-combat encounters. And while tactical considerations are important, the narrative arc of the characters, shaped by collaborative storytelling, drives the player experience. The rules facilitate immersion rather than defining the entirety of the gameplay. So at first glance, skirmish games and martial role-playing games seem strikingly similar, but also distinctly different. Both revolve around small groups of characters or units, each with distinct abilities that encourage strategic thinking. The use of miniatures and detailed terrain is common to both games, enhancing the visual and tactile experience. Campaign systems can also appear in both formats, allowing players to link battles or sessions into an overarching progression where characters or units evolve over time. But additionally, both formats reward players for creativity and adaptability. In skirmish war games, this might be using terrain to ambush an opponent or combining abilities to maximise damage. In role-playing games, players face similar tactical challenges, but often in scenarios where their choices also affect the story and the direction it's going in. These shared elements can blur the lines, making it tempting to view one as simply a variant of the other. Despite their similarities, skirmish games and role-playing games differ in their core focus. Skirmish war games prioritise tactical decisions and balanced gameplay, incorporating points values as a way for the players to achieve that balance. Success depends on mastering those rules, exploiting the strengths of one unit and adapting to opponent strategies. While some skirmish games incorporate narrative campaigns, these are often secondary to the mechanics of playing the game itself. For example, a scenario might explain why two forces are fighting, but the player's goal is still to win, not to collaboratively shape the story. Now, with role-playing games, storytelling takes precedence. Combat encounters are not isolated puzzles but integral parts of the narrative, and the prize for victory is usually defined by the treasure or information gained that drives the story and the characters forward. A battle in an RPG might be less about winning and more about advancing the story. Perhaps the party is buying time for civilians to escape, or trying to capture rather than kill an opponent, or seize a particular piece of information that drives on a storyline. Player decisions extend beyond combat tactics, shaping relationships, moral dimensions and the larger world. Even the mechanics, such as dice rolls or ability checks, are often framed as storytelling tools. Now, the line between skirmish games and role-playing games emerges when the focus shifts from tactics to narrative, or vice versa. A skirmish game begins to resemble an RPG when players invest in the backstories and personalities of their figures, turning battles into character-driven conflicts. Conversely, an RPG combat encounter starts to feel like a skirmish game when the narrative stakes fade, leaving only the mechanics of victory or defeat. I've played plenty of role-playing games incorporating what appeared to be back-to-back encounters until it felt like a skirmish campaign. But equally, campaign-driven skirmish war games give the player time to invest in their characters or their squad, and this feels much more like a typical role-playing game. Now, I've often described myself as being a story-driven player, which is perhaps understandable given my earliest tabletop experiences being games like D&D. Now, I do feel that understanding that overlap between skirmish war games and role-playing games can help the games designer and players. Designers can create hybrid games that blend the tactical depth of the skirmish war game with the narrative richness of a role-playing game. Now, again, I reference the games like Frostgrave or Stargrave, which incorporate role-playing type elements such as character progression and the story-driven campaigns into skirmish gameplay. Similarly, some role-playing systems such as Dungeons and Dragons have developed increasingly robust combat mechanics to satisfy players who enjoy tactical challenges. Now, sharing attributes of both types of game can expand the potential audience for the rules, maybe acting as a bridging set, if you like, between two sides of the hobby that I've always seen as sharing more similarities than differences. So skirmish games and martial role-playing games occupy a fascinating middle ground in tabletop gaming, sharing the tactical depth and immersive storytelling while differing in their own focus, in their core focus. The line between them is not rigid but fluid, defined by the balance of mechanics and narrative. So this week I want to ask, have you, like me, played both types of games? And to return to David's original question, are they the same thing, just approached from different directions? So as always, I would love to hear what you think in the comments below. So that's it for this week, a slightly shorter video because once again I've been ill again. To be precise, I seem to have had a resurgence of the stomach bug I had last week, so perhaps it hadn't entirely gone away after all. I'm hoping I'm not going to see a third sequel. I've got far too much to do to lose another couple of days, just wiped out completely by a stomach bug of all things. So let me sign off by saying, if you've enjoyed today's video, please subscribe and share, and of course if you leave your comments below. So until next week, stay safe, keep gaming, and of course keep rolling high.